Hello and welcome. I hope you've had a great day, lots of fascinating conversations. It's time now for our grand finale. The rate of growth of the Indian economy depends not just on what happens within the territorial boundaries of India, it also depends to a great extent, particularly at this moment. It is determined by all the geopolitical and geo-economic headwinds that are blowing internationally. And our next guest at the India Today, Business Today, post budget roundtable is the man whose mandate it is to walk this very fine line and try and deal with the likes of the Trump administration as India's chief negotiator for all our trade deals. Can we have a warm round of applause as I welcome our Minister for Commerce and Industry, Minister Piyush Goyal, for joining us. Piyush ji, welcome.
Thank you.
You know, it feels as if Nirmala ji has done her job and your job has just begun. All of you, I'm sure, know that Prime Minister Modi will be going to Washington, D.C. in a couple of days from now. The second week of February is when the Indian government will be trying to deal with the new Trump administration. Can you kickstart this conversation, Piyush ji, by giving everyone watching you at this time a sense of your preparations for dealing with everything the new Trump administration has coming your way?
I think you are overstating the situation. We have worked very closely with 4 US governments. The Obama administration, the Trump administration, the Biden administration, and now Trump too. Every subsequent engagement, every subsequent president and the Honorable Prime Minister have only further strengthened the India-US partnership. And this time around, it's going to be no different. So I'm very confident that it's going to be very good tidings for India. We stand poised to further expand our trade very rapidly. Our strategic, commercial, defense, and the comprehensive partnership has so many elements to it that when you put the sum of the whole, it becomes a really, really powerful partnership between 2 democracies, the world's largest, oldest. We are often called the mother of all democracies. And certainly, I think with the Trump government, we should not be having any difficulty in coming to very, very attractive and very strong relationship. We trust each other. The world trusts India. The world sees in India huge demand that a growing economy, the world's fastest growing economy, offers 1.4 billion aspirational Indians. The Prime Minister spoke about that today. The young population that we have with huge talent and skill, the demographic dividend, and our dependability, a trusted source for goods and services, who even during the worst period of the COVID did not let down anybody in the world. That's the India of today, and that's the friendship that we offer to all the countries of the world.
So in September 2020, Piyush Goyal made a comment that India and the United States have ironed out most issues on a limited trade agreement with Washington. I wonder, sir, where do you start from? Because at that time, America went into an election cycle. Robert Lighthizer and you were in negotiations, and we were supposed to be on the verge of a trade deal. Do you start from where you left off, or in this round with the new Trump administration, do we start afresh?
It really doesn't matter, because we had a wonderful relationship. Bob and I had really hit it off very well. We used to be talking to each other very often on the phone. And we never allowed any of the issues at that point of time come in the way of trade between the US and India. Our initial assessment is that we are going to only see things getting better. If you look at the peaking order of issues, illegal immigration is top on the agenda. And India is one country, not today, but for years has consistently followed a policy that we will not encourage illegal immigration, Indians going out from India to any part of the world illegally. We are ready and willing to accept anybody who's an Indian back home if they have gone out of the country without proper documentation. Of course, we'd like Britain to start first with a few elements of fugitives who are taking shelter in Britain under the legal processes there. But I do think that that issue is something on which the US policy and Indian policy is totally aligned. Second, you look at trade deficits. We are 11th in the peaking order of trade deficits. Our trade deficits is sub $40 billion. On a trade of $200 billion between goods and services, that's hardly anything. So I do believe that it's a gap that also has many other dimensions. For example, the $12-13 billion that our Indian students spend in universities in the US is not factored in when we look at trade deficit. The fact that a large number of US tech companies who did not get access in many other geographies has good business operations in India, being a liberal country, being a country which believes in the rule of law, a country which gives national treatment, equal treatment to all stakeholders. We have welcomed international participation in India's growth story with open arms. So when you factor in all of these elements, you'll find that for the US, India is a very, very strategically aligned, like-minded, friendly partner. And then, of course, President Trump and Prime Minister Modi share a very strong personal equation, which will also help us only make sure that our trade, our business, investments, and our overall US-India partnership continues to power on.
Minister, you mentioned the India-UK free trade agreement negotiations. Now, 14 rounds of negotiations have happened between the two countries. 2 Diwali deadlines have come and gone. We were always told कि इस दिवाली में अभी हो जाएगा. 2 Diwali deadlines have come and gone, and after that there have been elections in both countries.
Business Today ने कब से fake narrative शुरू कर दिया?
नहीं, मैं तो सच बता रहा हूँ.
ये deadline हमने तो कभी नहीं set की थी. आपने बनाई है कोई deadline?
Okay, fine. When the UK trade minister was asked about why the deal hasn't gone through, Kemi Badenoch said because India is asking for concessions on the issue of migration, which is why these haven't gone through. So, A, do you have a deadline in mind? I'm sure you'll have some answer to that. But B, where do things stand right now? There's a new government in place. And how do you see the gap being closed? I ask you this because Mr. Chidambaram, the former finance minister, was sitting where you are earlier in the afternoon. And his charge really was that we've missed out on multilateral trade agreements. We're barely being able to sign any bilateral trade agreements. That India is losing out on the global trading opportunity. So therefore...
Well, first of all, I'd like to tell Mr. Chidambaram, we don't do trade agreements the way his government did between 2004 and 14. Literally selling out in terms of trade agreements, selling out national interest in the trade agreement with Japan, with Korea, with the ASEAN countries. You must call a few industry participants, associations, and EPCs for an open house and hear what they have to say about the agreements done by the Congress party. You must hear them how they were being bulldozed to accept the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, by the Congress and the UPA government. We were not even actually a part of RCEP. Originally it was 15 countries. The Manmohan Singh government, suo motu, probably after that unholy visit and deal between the Communist Party of China and the Congress Party of Indian National Congress of India, probably sometime after that, you suddenly found the government holding a high-level meeting chaired by the Prime Minister, deciding that we will join the RCEP and offering to join the negotiations. Now, friends, remember the situation at that point of time. We already had an FTA, albeit a very bad FTA. with Korea, Japan, and ASEAN, 12 countries. Australia, we were in negotiations and we could have concluded that very easily because we are two complementary economies. We don't hurt each other in anything. 13, New Zealand, our total trade was some $300 million. Not even worth discussing. It's now gone up somewhat. But at that time, about $350 million. 14, which was the 15th country? China. Basically, the Congress has decided in 2011 or 12 to do an FTA with China. I dare say you will not find one person in this country who's a trader, who's a businessman, who runs industry, whether MSME or big, a dairy farmer, an agriculturist, you will not find a single person who's actually in business. You may find some academics who don't really understand what pain points we are facing because of non-market economy like China. We were going to throw India to the wolves. And I dare say it would have been the worst decision if we had joined RCEP, but it took a Prime Minister as courageous as Prime Minister Modi to stand up on 4th November 2019 after we had done almost 200 stakeholder consultations across the country with every sector, with farmers, with dairymen, with our spirits industry, with manufacturers, auto, every sector opposed an RCEP agreement. Because China is a non-market economy. There's no transparency. They suddenly pull down prices 30% overnight. And with their kind of predatory pricing, they can kill any sector anywhere in the world. Why do you think President Trump is concerned about the China ingress into the US economy and how it has hurt the US economy? That is the UP and Mr. Chidambaram's response. As far as UK is concerned, I think Mr. Arun Puri today is a very worried man. Because he always thought Rahul Kanwal has a very sharp memory. And you never miss a point. On your platform, you have asked me this question of deadlines probably twice, but at least once. My mistake could be whether once or twice because repetitive questions that you don't remember. How many times you ask?
अब आप कर लो deal sign, अब करते ही नहीं हो फिर.
The deadline was a comment that Mr. Boris Johnson had made when he came to India, that he would like to see it completed by Diwali. Even at that time when I was asked, I had said India does not negotiate any trade deal under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government with a gun on our head. There is never a time limit. There is never a pressure that you have to complete a deal or you have to complete a deal on a particular date. Both are not there. I can jolly well decide I don't want to do a deal with you, like we did with RCEP. Whatever is in national interest, whatever is in the interest of our future, our youngsters, our young men and women who will build Viksit Bharat 2047, that is what India and Prime Minister Modi will do. And whether it is Britain, whether it is EU, whether it is our discussions with several countries in the Middle East, they will all be done with the participation of India's business, India's farmers, and all other stakeholders. And we will come to a fair, equitable, and balanced win-win agreement. Otherwise, there will be no agreement. No deadlines at all. If we are satisfied that it is in our national interest, we will sign up on an agreement. Look at our agreements. Australia. Have you heard one criticism, anybody, about the FTA with Australia from any sector? Our FTA with Mauritius, our FTA with the UAE, our FTA with Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. Every stakeholder has been consulted. And by the way, for the first time in the history of the world, our EFTA agreement with Switzerland and the other three countries, for the first time in the world, Switzerland and the partner countries have committed to invest $100 billion as FDI. We won't count any FPI money coming from Norway's pension fund. All that is extra. There's a solid foreign direct investment in innovation, in manufacturing, in services, job-generating sectors, with a commitment to create 1 million direct jobs. So when $100 billion FDI comes in, it almost translates when you look at domestic investment, the ancillaries ecosystem, the debt, to maybe $500-600 billion of hard investments in the country. 1 million direct jobs means 5 or 6 million jobs for our young men and women.
What, Piyush?
That is the kind of agreement, never before in history. And it's a commitment backed with a clawback. If they don't meet that, I can claw back the concessions given to them. This is the national interest that this government keeps paramount, not deadlines.
So what Piyush ji has been able to negotiate in the European Free Trade Agreement is very significant because it involves a $100 billion investment in India. Do you think that can be a model you can implement with Donald Trump and the United States? I'll tell you why. Because I heard President Trump at Davos and he said, make in America or face tariffs. He told the global community that. So that's one model. You were able to masterfully negotiate with countries like Liechtenstein, Norway, Iceland, Switzerland, $100 billion investment in India. Donald Trump बोल रहा है मेरे पास invest करो. Now how do you reconcile these two things? What do you
बुरा
think?
idea नहीं है. Indians today have the capability, capacity, and the confidence that we can also invest in the world. By the way, I have many country examples because we keep reviewing every country where we have invested at times more than they have invested. So UK, Indian investment in UK is more than UK's investment in India. That is the thing Indians are proud of today. हमारे में सामर्थ्य है, हमारे में क्षमता है. With the US, we are already having probably $200 billion of their investments in the country. It's a two-way affair. I know so many Indians who are going and investing in the US also. In the IRA program, the Inflation Reduction Act effort to improve the manufacturing ecosystem. Or now with Mr. Trump encouraging Make in America, I'm sure some Indian businesses will look at investing in the US also. Why not?
India seems quite reconciliatory towards the United States. The Revenue and Finance Secretary you would have seen, Tuhin Kanta Pandey, said we're signaling through this budget that India is not tariff king. So is that really a message to the Donald Trump administration that we don't want to get on your wrong side, and therefore before you start raising these issues like Harley Davidson, big motorcycles, we ourselves will reduce
We
customs
were
duty?
just removing some misconceptions. I'd like to share with your august audience the reality. Sadly, when the WTO works out the tariff rate of each country, they take the simple average of all the lines, harmonized HSN lines, and take a simple average of that and announce that as the average tariff of the country. Now the reality is you don't trade in every trading line or every HSN code. A country largely trades in about 1,000-1,500 lines. I'm sure you're conscious of that. At best 2,000 lines, and 90-95% of the trade is covered in that. Now when you look at the applied rate, the rate which people pay on actually importing anything, one has to look at the weighted average. And when you look at the weighted average of what we collect as import duties, our imports are almost, I think, 60 or 70 lakh crores. Whereas our total import duty collected is less than 3 lakh crores. So our weighted average is about 5.5% of import tariffs. So really India is not a tariff king, and nor is it very high at operating level. There are certain items which are just not imported into India, where the rates may be high and therefore the simple average looks extraordinarily high. And that is what I think Tuhin Kant was trying to say.
Minister, you took a pot shot at me saying that I was making a big deal of it, but I'm very curious to know, what do you make of the move on tariffs by the new Trump administration against countries like Mexico, Canada, China? Against Mexico, it's been paused for a month because you've got border guards now. what, as somebody who has to potentially deal with a very mercurial administration, how concerned are you about what may be coming your way?
First of all, I didn't take a pot shot on you. You're my dear friend. I can always take a little bit of a chance with you. But that's one thing I was very clear in my mind about. That's why I thought I should mention it. Second, they have also paused the tariff on Canada. So I think I'm not unduly worried, and nor do I want to start preempting that there is going to be any issue. You have to watch the signals. Prime Minister Modi has been invited, one of the first leaders of a big country to be invited at the White House. It clearly signals that bonding and that friendship which was developed over the years continues to date. I don't see any cause for worry as we speak. At the same time, I think we are two mature countries who can deal with issues in a mature manner.
Pharma exports from India have been a bugbear for the United States. So what's your message to the pharma industry, and how do you view the issue of American government and administration thinking that Indian pharma companies selling these cheap generics are taking the American system for a ride?
I don't think there's any cause for worry there, because our overall share of the American pharma industry is very small. Second, a lot of that material is made by European or American companies under contract manufacturing in India and exported to the US. And lastly, the US also needs to keep their healthcare costs affordable. So on generic medicines, usually, after it runs out of its patent protection, is when we are able to enter the market with attractive pricing, which serves the interests of the common man of the United States. So I personally think American healthcare industry is better off with the Indian pharma products.
Sir, Rahul Gandhi attacked the government's PLI scheme, saying that, this whole business of make in India is basically assemble in India. He says you're not adding very much value. Raghuram Rajan was the original proponent of this critique, saying that this is basically, ye buddhu bana rahe hamara, this is assemble in India rather than manufacture in India. Look at the actual value added rather than just these assemblies that are happening.
ऐसा है, राहुल गांधी जी के लिए तो पुराना हिंदी गाना है ना, समझने वाले समझ सके,
गा के सुनाइए।
जो ना समझे
तो गा के सुनाइए।
हमको गाना नहीं आता, मेरी बीवी मुझे मार डालेगी अगर मैं गाने की कोशिश भी करूँगा। परंतु वास्तव में some people are incorrigibly ignorant. You can't do anything about them. So I don't even think I need to respond to the fact with facts and figures of so many sectors. I mean, even if he's alluding to the mobile sector, the mobile industry worldwide has a maximum value add of 35% in any one country. We are already at 18%, already, in the short span of 3 or 4 years. 3 years since the PLI really came into effect. And they have targets to go up to 35%. Even with 18% value add, by the way, friends, they're creating nearly 1 million jobs, 1 million jobs. And good, high-paying jobs with very good facilities, very good working conditions. I think 70 or 80% women. बुरा सौदा है। मुझे नहीं लगता यहाँ रूम में कोई भी बोलेगा कि बुरा सौदा है। आई थिंक अगर हमारी 8 लाख 7 लाख 8 लाख बहनों को मोबाइल फ़ोन बनाने में नौकरी मिली है, इससे ज़्यादा आनंद की बात कोई नहीं हो सकती। पर राहुल गांधी जी, आज आपने प्रधानमंत्री जी को सुना होगा, राहुल गांधी जी एक अलग तबके से आते हैं। उनको ये सब छोटी चीज़ें लगती हैं, जॉब, लोगों की सुख सुविधाएं, महिलाओं की सुविधाएं, उनको वो चीज़ों में कोई रुचि नहीं है। वैसे उन्होंने तो कोई काम किया भी नहीं है अपने पूरे जीवन में। आई डोंट नो ये लाइफस्टाइल कैसे अफोर्ड करते हैं, ये तो सवाल आज तक किसी ने जवाब ही नहीं दिया है। इतना फॉरेन ट्रिप्स और ये सब का पैसा कैसे आता है? Who pays for all that?
I don't know.
You don't know? Rahul should keep track of another Rahul, na?
I just do my job. That's the No, so
as regards Raghuram Rajan, I think some people choose to be ignorant because they are ideologically so very disturbed that how can Mr. Modi set things right in this country? I think the gentleman had some fancy ideas and fancy dreams about having higher offices in this country. The country has suffered enough under certain people's administration or work, and I think he can keep his wise counsel to himself. I only feel sorry for the students who go to that university where he possibly teaches.
Possibly teaches University of Chicago, boots on the world's
Yeah,
top
but
business schools.
I don't know what he teaches there because I have seen him in operation over here, and I don't think he did a very admirable job for this country.
He was the Reserve Bank governor, and now there's a...
He held many positions.
Of course, but...
He was with Mr. Manmohan Singh as his advisor when Colgate and all of these happened, possibly.
No.
So he has a lot to answer about all the various scams that came out in the 2010 to 14 period when he had several positions in the UPA government. I suspect you've never asked him all of that.
वो क्या करेगा? वो तो इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर था स्कैम
अरे
में.
तो उनके इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर के सामने देश की इकोनॉमी बर्बाद हो रही है तो इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर को कुछ समझाना चाहिए कि नहीं अपने नेता को.
Sir, there is a new RBI governor, and I'm just trying to figure out how to frame this question smartly. But basically, the government has reduced and rationalized taxation in the hope that you will create a consumption spree from the taxpayer. What's your signal? You're not finance minister, so I can actually ask you this question. What's your signal from the government to the new RBI governor for what they should potentially try and consider in the monetary policy committee that happens on the 5th?
Well, of course, this is a time of the year or the time of the month when we shouldn't be commenting on what the central bank does. None of us has to comment on that. I think we have to leave it to the wise men in the MPC.
But are you hoping
to
for a
take
rate
a decision.
cut? Is the government hoping for a
My
rate cut?
views about interest rates are public. They have been debated extensively. Possibly you need to just look back a month or two and you will find
No, I'm
that
asking in the current
about my
context, are
views
you-
about interest rates in
Are
the
you
current
thinking it's
context.
time for a rate cut?
Well, I won't comment on whether it's time for a rate cut or no. I'll only make two comments because both of which I'm on record several times. One, monetary policy and fiscal policy should work in tandem. And growth is the biggest imperative before the country today. Considering that, I think the government has done an admirable job through fiscal policies. I'm sure all other bodies and all other responsible people who are tasked with taking care of the country's growth story will take due cognizance of all the actions of the government and act in the best interests of the country. That's point number one. Point number two, I'm on record more than once, and not since now, since before I even became a minister. So I have said this to even Mr. Subbarao, Dr. Subbarao, who was an RBI governor much before our government came into power. I have consistently held that food inflation happens due to supply side constraints. The demand supply of food is inelastic. People will want milk in their tea in the morning. People do like, as income levels are increasing, to have better quality of food, including pulses, including butter or ghee or oils, including good vegetables, good fruits. They would like to have the good things of life, and this demand is quite inelastic. Therefore, considering food inflation while setting interest rates is fallacious. Interest rates have no impact, absolutely no impact in trying to bring down food inflation. I challenge anybody to prove me otherwise because we've looked at the numbers of warehouse receipts or funding against foodstuffs. As Consumer Affairs Minister, we used to monitor if we found any prices going up, whether banks have lent a lot of money or NBFCs have lent a lot of money, which is stocking foodstuffs. Those days are gone now. Nobody hoards or stocks foodstuffs. with bank money or bank loans. Therefore, interest rates have no role to play in food inflation, and core inflation is the one that monetary policy makers should really focus on and address, and should not allow growth to become a casualty.
Okay, so we'll take some questions from those who've gathered over here. I'll start with Siddharth Zarabi, editor at Business Today. Siddharth.
Piyush ji, as the Commerce Minister, I wonder what is your view on the current depreciation of the Indian rupee?
Well, you, Siddharth, very well know that across the world, because of the strong US numbers in terms of their growth numbers, in terms of their focus of building their own growth story much faster, there has been a flight of capital back to the United States. Also, interest rates in the US continue to be very high. And given that situation across the world, the US dollar has strengthened. Rather than only comparing India to the US dollar, we will have to benchmark to all other emerging markets and what is the depreciation of their currency and what is the corresponding depreciation of the Indian rupee. And I think you may be well aware that Indian rupee is one of the best performing currencies amongst the emerging market world. Our depreciation is roughly half in terms of percentage. So we are at about 2.5% or 2.83% versus a 5.5-6% that most other competing economies have seen.
So one quick follow-up. In 2.5-3 decades post-liberalization, India has negotiated roughly 15-16 FTAs, regional trade agreements. You as the Commerce Minister have a very busy 2025 on multiple trade negotiations. My broader question is, what do you feel that will be achieved in Prime Minister Modi's third term with regard to India's global trade engagement and consequent economic situation globally?
Just to add to the depreciation point, I think you may also like to study the depreciation of the rupee until 2014, for whatever period of time you want to check, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or even 60 years, versus the depreciation of the rupee since 2014 to today. And you'll see a very pleasant story. From 47 to 2014.
Depreciation as a bad thing?
Oh, it's a bad thing, all right. 2047 to 14, the rupee depreciated at about 5.5%, 14 till now at about 2.5%. Siddharth got very excited when I said it's a bad thing, because I do believe that we must, in the long run, focus on a stronger currency, because we are yet an import-dependent country. And a depreciation of the rupee does not necessarily help the Indian economy. Which is why I'm happy that our depreciation is much less than our other competing economies, point one. And as regards 2025, yes, there's a lot on the agenda. Prime Minister Modi's third term has a very big differentiating factor compared to the earlier regimes. One, we don't have the fragile 5 weak fundamentals of the economy which we inherited in 14. The third term has begun on a strong note, very strong macroeconomic fundamentals on every score. The world's 5th largest economy, poised to be 3rd largest in another 2 years, 2.5 years. Good foreign currency reserves, fastest growing economy. Lot of interest in the world in doing trade and business with India. The Indian passport having an unheard of respect and value today. And Indian businesses coming of age with state-of-the-art modern technologies and innovations coming out of the stables in India. So the India growth story is going to be only getting better and better in the third term. India is going to rise rapidly towards its goal to become a $32-35 trillion economy in 2047.
Okay, Karishma Sudani.
So good evening. You spoke about China, and I have a question on the China +1 policy. Now, the economic survey last year in 2024 spoke about how we need China in order to get investments. But it has stayed silent this time. However, a Niti Aayog report that was released a month back said that China plus one strategy has done more good to Vietnam, Cambodia, or say Malaysia rather than India. Are we subtly moving away from the China plus one strategy?
First of all, ma'am, I've always held that the India growth story is not going to be dependent on any other country or their problems. We have our own strengths. Our people are our strength. Our technological superiority will become our strength. Our STEM graduates, the world's largest number of STEM graduates, 43% of them women. That is our strength. Our demography, our democracy. The world today is looking up to India because of the rule of law. They know that, you won't disappear one fine day only to come out as a professor in a Japanese university. That won't happen in India. It can happen to a neighboring country. So I think India has some very powerful, compelling reasons to attract investment. Having said that, the Vietnam story or the Thailand story has two important elements. One, both of them are not following the rule of law. They don't have democracy in the true sense of the word like India. And therefore, they have an ability to do many things much faster. So they've entered into an FTA with EU, for example. They can do an EU without any stakeholder consultation, without any bothering that they have a 1.4 billion people to look after. They have millions of young men and women coming out of college every year. Those concerns they do not have. So they have much more flexibility and elbow room. But we will do the same thing smarter. And gradually other countries are recognizing that it's important to work with a democracy for long-term sustainable supply chains. Second, these countries are closely aligned with China. If you get into detail, many of these investments have come from China. A case in point, the China-US trade surplus in favor of China fell by about $100 billion in the last 4 years. At the same time, the Vietnam-US surplus in favor of Vietnam increased from 3 billion to 104 billion or thereabouts. My numbers could be give or take a few billion. But 100 billion which reduced in China increased in Vietnam. Exactly what you're saying, China plus one. But that's not what the US wanted. They did not want to go into the hands of Chinese companies, but in another geography. And I think that is what the Trump administration will address in the days to come.
Are you disappointed that the DeepSeek innovation in a new foundational AI model happened in a small company in mainland China rather than India? Because you're saying we're at the cutting edge of innovation, but we seem to be focusing more on use cases of AI. This kind of cutting edge innovation doesn't seem to happen.
My dear friend, every country is working on different models. Our people are working on their models. So tomorrow you will say we sent our space mission to Mars at such a affordable, such a competitive price. Does that mean that China is a failed story or all other countries have failed? Every country is working on different things. We were successful on space better than any other country. This time around, they did better on the deep sea. But many of our young men and women are working on it.
Okay.
So it's a continuous journey.
Sakshi Batra.
Honorable Minister, thank you for the opportunity. I work with Business Today. I'm Sakshi Batra and I track the markets. I want to circle back to the currency question yet again. President Donald Trump has yet again threatened the BRICS nations if they want to move away from the dollar and look at an alternative currency. India was also looking at creating Rupee as the alternative currency. What exactly would your thought be now?
When did we announce that?
No, we did not announce it. There is a thought process that we should be looking at and encouraging of
You
the
are
Rupee
seeing
getting.
into the government something that I may have missed possibly. Because I think we are on record that we do not support any BRICS currency. Imagine we having a currency which we share with China. You must be imagining something, but we certainly have no plans. And
But would you like that the Rupee should be looked at?
It's impossible to think of a BRICS currency.
Okay, it's impossible to think of a BRICS currency. Sahil has a question. The minister has a big election meeting to do also. All these trade deals are okay for election, we jeetna hai. Okay, last couple of questions, we wrap up very quickly.
Well, Mr. Goyal, today Mr. Chidambaram was here at the BT conclave, and he made a remark, and I'll just quote him today that that this time comes with an unpredictable U.S. precedent. And what Mr. Chidambaram had said is that before Prime Minister Modi leaves for US, he should have a closed-door meeting with the opposition leaders. And he also gave an example saying that even during Vajpayee's time, such kind of meetings had happened with Manmohan Singh and Chidambaram. Also at the time of UPA, he had consulted Yashwant Sinha and Jaswant Singh before making such kind of trips. So, do you expect that such kind of meeting will happen? How do you respond to that?
ट्रिप में ऐसा क्या विशेष है जो उनसे हमें कंसल्ट करना पड़ेगा? We don't have a border dispute. We don't have any problem with the US. We are two friendly countries. So ऐसे तो कल वो बोलेंगे प्रधानमंत्री तो फ्रांस जा रहे हैं पहले एक मीटिंग फ्रांस के ऊपर करो, फिर अमेरिका पे करो, कतार से कोई यहाँ आ रहा है तो पहले इनके साथ मीटिंग करो, और हमको वो गलतियाँ करके फिर ऑपोजिशन में नहीं बैठना है. आज प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कहा, if you might have heard his speech, that this is only our third term. We want to serve the country for many more years. तो उनकी सलाह से तो हमें गलत ट्रैक पे नहीं जाना है.
Okay, so we're out of time. Chetan has one final question and then we wrap this up. Chetan Bhutani.
Good evening, sir. As Rahul asked you on the UK FTA, I'd like to further ask what is the development as far as the FTA with EU is concerned, and of course, you recently visited Oman. Where are we, and of course, any updates as far as for us is concerned?
Well, you do follow my travels quite well, huh? We are in dialogue with many countries, amongst them the EU, the bloc of 27 European countries, with the UK, with Oman and others along the way. And all are progressing extremely well. And I can assure you, if India gets a good deal, as we perceive it, in the interests of our people, our businesses, our farmers, we shall sign up. Entirely dependent on the deal that we get, how fair, equitable and balanced it is.
But there's also election cycle in Germany, and that has its own compulsions in terms of the EU trade negotiations.
वो
So maybe
election
Piyush-
cycle European Union का हो चुका है. The European Union went into election cycle yesterday, as did India. So there was a little bit of a hiatus. Now the new trade commissioner is in place from 1st December. We've already had a meeting spread over 14 and a half hours on Saturday and Sunday. 14 and a half hours, Saturday, Sunday in Brussels. The entire trade commissioner's office was working, and we were on extensive discussions. Again, I would like to repeat, समझने वाले समझ गए.
Sir, the Delhi elections is the big political catch. Do you accept that this is about pride? It's not so significant politically. It's under your nose, you've got a guy you don't like as chief minister, and therefore there's that dynamic. And Arvind Kejriwal is now alleging that the election commission, the Delhi police are being used as BJP karyakartas, and that money is being doled out in the hundreds of crores, he claims, to buy the Juggi voters so that they don't go out and vote. How do you respond to this?
He also claims that the media is the B team of the Modi government. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. तो ऐसे तो claim करने में तो tax भी नहीं लगता है. He can claim what he likes. They're all baseless and frivolous allegations. I think he's lost the plot. The people of Delhi are fed up with him. He's an anarchist of the worst order. An urban Naxal who has only brought disruption and disarray and no development for the people of Delhi. And he deserves to lose. The loss is going to start from New Delhi. You mark my words, today I'm saying it on your platform. He will lose New Delhi very resoundingly. He will lose that seat in New Delhi. And his entire government is going to sit at home from 8th onwards.
So the audience in the 5-star hotel of the capital is clapping. The question is, will the Juggis clap for you as well? That's where the battle of Delhi
You
will
should
be.
have, abhi to campaign khatam ho gaya, otherwise you should have come and seen
मैं गया.
the response in the Juggis that the BJP is getting, that Prime Minister Modi, Amit Shah ji, Rajnath ji all have been getting. It's phenomenal. They have realized that they've been taken for a ride. without development, I mean, imagine in 10 years, nobody has been given any proper home. Whereas look at a city like Mumbai under Devendra Fadnavis, the amount of construction of new homes for the slum dwellers. In my own constituency, you must have seen construction all over the place when you came. There's so much happening to give the Jhuggi Jhopdi, the slum dwellers, their own home where they live, a good proper home. We believe every child born in India has the right to a good quality of life. And the Jhuggi Jhopdis, the JJ clusters, the chawls, all those who have been deprived of development, of good housing, clean water, proper local area facilities, gardens, all of them are looking up to Prime Minister Modi's leadership, a new double-engine government of the BJP in Delhi, and we have assured all of them that we'll immediately embark on a program to replace the Jhuggi Jhopdis with a proper home exactly where they live, they will get a good quality house for their families to live a life of dignity.
I wonder whether the minister was more charged up answering questions on limited trade deals and free trade agreements, or on the question of politics and who will win in the capital. I leave it to each of you to come to your own conclusions. For taking out time on a very busy day and joining us here at the Business Today, India Today, Post-Budget Roundtable, Minister, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.